Hi guys, welcome back to Gecko Made. Today we're doing a how to care video on Fern. It's not as easy as you think. Uh, as loving and as cute and precious as water dragons are and will be even into their adult ages if you handle them while young, they are quite advanced to take care of. They need crazy high humidity as well as a basking spot. They need water that they can go in, as well as sitting water that can be cleaned and filtered and ran through, and it has to be moving. And feeding doesn't always go so well. Like I said in my last video, it's hard to get an adult water dragon because sometimes when they're young, especially if they're wild caught and not captive bred, our little guy is captive bred. They just will not eat. They will stop eating. You can force feed them, and sometimes that will pick them back up, but other times they'll just not, and you gotta be able to face that reality. So let's get into that. So humidity and tank setup for humidity. We currently have him with Spike, and that's because Spike is his little friend. They don't go anywhere hardly without each other. And that's just until he gets big. They will not fit in the same enclosure once Fern reaches the size he's supposed to be. This is comparison. So Spike here is about a foot long, and so is Fern, plus a couple inches, and he is at least half the age of Spike. So, you need a pretty big enclosure. So enclosures need to be 4x6, and they prefer tall, so 6 on the tall end and 4 on the wide end, and just make it like a 4x4 foot box. I guess I don't really know what that would be in metric, so like a meter. A meter point like 3 for the dimensions, and then like 2.5 meters tall. Okay, so you need to get specific with that. And with that enclosure, it needs lots of climbing space and running space. Right now, he needs it for running, but in the future, he'll need it for climbing. Because unless you're willing to adapt a whole room, or if you live in a tropical climate, on the run, where he can be outside. I'll just put him on the whatever, it's fine. Go wherever he wants. That's fine. Alright, I think he's found a place he likes. that enclosure needs climbing space, and it has to be fully enclosed because they need crazy amounts of humidity. And that also needs to be throughout the enclosure, as well as just a little bit at the bottom, so he has a nice hot dry spot up top, because otherwise their shed is going to get stuck and they can lose bits of their tail, chunks of their skin. You want the high humidity, and we currently have ours set at about the same as what Spike had, and that's 70s and up. Anything below 70%, you want to make sure that you're getting in there with either a toddler toothbrush, which is super soft bristled, or you can go online and get specific reptile brushes, and those are going to be even softer bristled. And we do that soak every other day, every other couple of days, and it's just in lukewarm water. You want it right around the same temperature as their basking water that you have in the enclosure. So with humidity, you're going to want there to be a decent temperature to not only help evaporate that water, to assist with humidity unless you get a mister or a fogger, which would be an incredibly smart decision to do. We just haven't got around to purchasing it yet. That's why we have the fountain with the half aquarium, half rock and moss space. So the temperature you want to keep it at is anywhere from the 70s to mid 70s, all the way to the basking spot, which is going to be up to 80 degrees. So temperature is going to be 70, 75, up to 80 to 85. And the basking spot can be a little warmer, but make sure they can't get too close to it, otherwise they will burn themselves. They do need UV as well as with the heat lights, so gotta add that onto the budget. They're not this enclosure is going to cost, whether you build it or you buy it and do it properly, easily $300. And that's not including if you get it off from, say, Craigslist or the Facebook Marketplace. That's actually where we got his current enclosure from, for like $100, and it's insanely huge. So your Chinese water dragon is going to eat quite a bit. They're a little fussy with what you're giving them, but they'll eat crickets, worms, and the little roaches as well. And once they become adults, you can also start feeding them fruits and vegetables. Make sure to look up on which ones you can and can't give them though, and if you can grow them locally, even better. Make sure to wash them very well if you do store buy them. Organic is generally best, simply because you have no fear of anything going into them. And there's only room for one. Or two. We can do two. Alright. Just make sure you wash your fruits and vegetables super well regardless of whether you're growing them, if you're buying them organic, if you're buying them local. Wash them well. You don't want any little critters getting inside your critter. So as I was saying with that, they will eat a lot, usually as adults. It's kind of rare to see them as juveniles munching on fruits and vegetables, but it's definitely a good time to start letting them see that like these other things that aren't necessarily moving, such as a cricket would, are also edible. And last but not least, before I leave you guys again, I just want to put out there to make sure to get these guys from a reputable breeder. If not a breeder, a pet store that you have a ton of faith in. You can ask questions, never be afraid to ask questions. Generally, the managers might not necessarily know if they're captive bred or wild caught, but they can always give you phone numbers, or you can give them their email, and they're pretty good about getting back to you. So never be afraid to ask questions. And that's really all I have left to say, is be smart with where you're choosing them from. And also make sure, as with any animal, you have the supplies as well as the enclosure for them before you bring them home, because these guys are not simple. It's definitely something you're going to want set up for a few days in advance. I believe that's all I have left to say, so for now, have a good night. Thanks for watching.